All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting daily vlog. This is Daily Vlog 2025, number 115. And today, we're doing more theory crafting because I got a great idea. I needed a drink. Hello. I have to admit, it is a pain in the ass to try and open bottles with my tremor. Just that. So, today, I thought about doing something involving Jeremy Crawford's last day. He is officially announced today is his last day at Wizards of the Coast and at Dungeons and Dragons. There was a slight difference. Like Chris Perkins mentioned, he was retiring from Dungeons and Dragons. Crawford basically just said, "I can't wait to see what's next in my future." So it happened. I might do a video about it tomorrow, but today, since we've been on this kick about kind of theory crafting and finding out what the important parts of various different classes are, I thought it would be fun to talk about defiling. For anyone who's unaware, there's a campaign setting. Came out during second edition to the D&D. I believe it was 93, 92, 93, somewhere around there. Campaign setting is called Dark Sun. And it's set on what's referred to as the burnt world of Athos. And I actually did a video talking over a year ago now. Might have been a couple years. I can't remember because time is hard. But I did a video that actually went over kind of the history of the planet of Athos and how it used to be this gorgeous, lush world. And then some stuff happened it shouldn't have, and it turned it into this desolate desert planet. And one of the interesting things about Athos is there are no deities there. The deities just went, fuck this shit, we're done. So divine magic technically doesn't exist. Clerics all worship the elemental spheres in order to be able to get their magic. And arcane magic, for the most part, is forbidden because of a style of magic called defiling. And defiling magic is actually one of the reasons why Athos is the way it is. Defiling magic, in a nutshell, from a lore perspective, is basically when someone casts a spell, they get the magic for that spell from the plant life around them. So they literally drain the plants around them to be able to cast their spells. And the interesting thing about defiling magic is when an area is defiled, nothing can grow in that area for a minimum of a year. And depending on how much defiling magic is used in that area, it can effectively get to the point where, unless you're looking at a huge macro scale, that land is effectively just never going to produce any living thing again. So, in the burnt world of Athos, arcane magic in general is forbidden unless you are a sorcerer king or you work for a sorcerer king. Everyone else is not allowed to use it because, again, defiling massively screws up the world. And because they live in a desert and getting food and things like that is already really, really difficult, defiling magic can literally wipe out civilizations because it'll destroy their food supply. Now, there is an alternate form of magic called preserving, where people that practice defiling magic are known as defilers, and people that use preserving magic are referred to as preservers. And so preservers still have to kind of draw their power from the land. They have to get their arcane power somewhere. And there isn't like a god of magic that's kind of making sure that magic is available for humans to use. They have to just get it everywhere they can. But the thing with defilers is they're very, very careful about how they use their magic, and they take only enough to give them the minimum amount of power for their spells, so they don't permanently damage the ground. But because of that, it's significantly harder to be a preserver than it is to be a defiler. Mechanically, how it worked was when it first came out in second edition, the big difference between defilers and preservers was defilers earned levels significantly faster, and preservers gained levels significantly slower. So there is definitely a benefit to being a defiler. You would grow in power significantly more quickly, but anytime a defiler cast a spell, there's a little table, because this is still early D&D. Tables, despite the fact that second edition got rid of most of the tables, didn't get rid of all of the tables. And so there was a table where basically you would look at how lush the environment was around you and what level spell you were casting, and then it would give you the radius around you that would become defiled after casting a spell there. Yeah, so that mechanically, that's kind of how, any defiling magic exclusively takes magic from plants and non-sentient life, specifically just plants. However, humans and things like that are still, when defiling magic is cast, because it does rip life energy out of the area around them, if someone is within the kind of radius of defiling, they still feel an immense amount of pain, and they actually take a penalty to their initiative every time they are near a defiler casting their spell. So they basically, it doesn't stop them from taking their turn, but it shifts their turn down more and more and more, the more times and the more powerful the defiling spell is. So mechanically, that's how they handled it. They made it effectively easier to be a defiler than it was to be a preserver by making them level up faster. And then the majority of defiling magic was kind of role play consequences. You know, you'd be destroying the land and stuff like that. But from a mechanical aspect, the only real downside to using defiling magic was it would lower your initiative score. And that was really it. Third edition didn't technically have official Dark Sun support, but there was a Dragon Magazine article that tried to bring defiling magic to the third edition. I wasn't able to find the specific, when I was doing research for this, I wasn't able to find the specific Dragon Magazine article. But I was able to read some reviews and stuff like that, and effectively, the consensus I was able to see is defiling magic in third edition was complicated, and third edition was already complicated. So I don't know what they did in third edition to try and make defiling magic a thing, but it didn't catch on. Let's put it that way. There are not huge swaths of people that are still playing third edition Dark Sun games. It wasn't a thing. When we get to fourth edition, they added defiling magic basically as an at-will power, where anytime you cast a daily arcane spell, you could defile as part of casting that spell, and it basically allowed you to re-roll either the attack roll or the damage roll for it. But it would defile the ground around you, and any allies within the area, which was decided upon by the level of the daily spell, would lose hit points equal to, I think, half a healing surge. So healing surges, if I remember correctly, were either like a quarter or 20% of your max health. So you were losing like 10-15% of your max health if you were too close to a defiler while they were defiling. So that was kind of the basic defiling that anyone that had arcane powers could defile. And then there was a Paragon path that was created specifically for defilers. You had to, I think, either use the defiler. You either had to have the defiler at will power, or you had to use one of the Dark Sun themes, the Templar Dark Sun theme, meaning you were working for a Sorcerer King. And that one actually allowed you, instead of just hurting your friends, you could actually defile and steal hit points from the enemies when you were doing it, which was kind of cool. And then there was an epic destiny for it, where the end result of being a defiler was if you could master defiling magic, you eventually could go through a ritual that would turn yourself into a dragon. In the history of Dark Sun, there's only been one being that's ever achieved full dragonhood, and they were referred to as the Dragon. And their name was Boris. I know, weird name for a dragon, but it's Boris the Dragon. And so they are the only true dragon in all of Dark Sun. Is this one character, Boris, who used to be a defiler and eventually was able to go through this really, really brutal. Like there are descriptions of exactly what happens to the defiler as they turn into a dragon. Like their flesh peels off. Like it's gruesome, and it requires sacrificing thousands of people to use their life force energy to complete the ritual. So it's a real horrible thing. But the epic destiny, I think, is called like Dragon God or something like that, or Dragon King. And so that is your path of trying to eventually reach dragonhood. So again, from a mechanical standpoint, they made it so defiling wasn't a specific character class. It was anyone that uses arcane magic has the option of defiling, and it's something that you choose to do. From a mechanical perspective, it really was just, I get a free reroll, which is nice. Again, from a mechanics perspective, rerolls are very, very nice. But the cost associated with it was rough, to say the least. Because you'd be hurting your own allies in order to use the defiling power, or you would have to be away from them. And it really didn't come into its own unless you took the Defiler Paragon path. I can't remember the name of it. I've got it here. I can look up the damn thing. There we go. So, let's go back to Guardian of the Land, Mind General, Gladiator. I think I missed it. Master Defiler is the Paragon path. So yeah, defiling in 4th edition really didn't come into its own unless you took the Master Defiler Paragon path, because then you could really start using the Defiler. Like you'd get an encounter ability that basically allowed you to cast an at will, but give it extra damage. And you get to re-roll attacks from that at will power for the next turn. So yeah. So yeah, again, from a mechanical setting, the 4th edition version of Defiling started to get closer to the idea of what it was like from a lore perspective to be a Defiler in Dark Sun. And again, Defilers were hated by everyone because they were effectively blamed for the world being this barren, devoid of life husk of a world, which isn't 100% true. There was other things that happened, including, I think it was called the Brown Scourge or something like that, that actually did it. But Defiling Magic was one of the catalysts, whatever the plural of catalyst is. And so yeah, they're truly hated and feared amongst most denizens of Athos, and the 4th edition version of it starts to kind of give you a mechanical reason why. Because again, in 2nd edition, the only real downside was in combat, your turn would come slightly later. And that was really it. If you were using your defiling powers outside of combat, there really wasn't a downside mechanically. Where when we go into 4th edition, there's an actual downside to using it, where it's actually hurting people. And once you get to the Master Defiler Paragon path, now you have kind of an incentive that makes you want to do it, because you start doing a decent amount of extra damage, and you start becoming decently powerful with it. So that in and of itself is pretty cool. And then you can eventually get, like I said, to that dragon epic destiny. I'm going to see if I can find it real quick. This is the Avignon. That's a preserver thing. Dragon King. Which is cool. Yeah, and so if you do the Dragon King, when you use Arcane Defiling, you get a bonus to attack rolls and to damage rolls from it. You eventually get a fly speed. Yeah, there's lots of really cool stuff that happens if you are a Dragon King. So, yeah, and then 5th edition, they've gone on record stating we're not doing Dark Sun, which is really, really sad, because again, Dark Sun, compared to literally every other campaign setting that exists for Dungeons and Dragons, Dark Sun is unique. You can say that something like Ravenloft is kind of unique because it's a horror setting, and most of Dungeons and Dragons tends to be either high fantasy or dark fantasy, and so horror is a decent switch from it, but you still have all of the same stuff. Like paladins are still paladins. There's still deities that you get to worship. Wizards are still wizards. Dark Sun changed everything. They added psionics, which maybe we'll do a psychic class in one of these videos. I don't know. But they added psionics in that aspect. And again, this whole defiling preserver thing was really, really big. And there are no deities. All clerics and druids have to worship a sphere, an elemental sphere. They can't worship a deity because deities don't exist. Like Dark Sun is such a unique world, and Athos in and of itself is such a unique world that it's really annoying that they don't want to update it for 5th edition. But to be perfectly fair, with some of the stuff that they've done from other updates, I'm not particularly upset that they don't get a chance to screw up Dark Sun. It's not to say that I think they screwed up every single one. Dragonlance was fine. Spelljammers was fine. They just weren't great. They weren't nearly as bad as people claim that they are. Let's put it that way. But I also don't have a huge connection to either one of those settings. So it's possible they are a lot worse than I think, and it's because I'm not as familiar with them, I don't have as big a deal with it. But anyway, so getting to the kind of theory crafting aspect of this video, we have to start off by defining what is a defiler. A defiler, as we are going to treat it in this, is going to be an arcane magic user that actively drains life from around them in order to empower their spells. Oh, that's what I remember. I do remember some of the rules for third edition, and they were basically when you were preparing your spells, depending on your intelligence score and how verdant the life was around you, you could actually get extra spells when you were preparing your spells in the morning, or get less spells, and things like that. Like, there were, again, it was really complicated. So anyway, definition of a defiler for this theory crafting episode is it is an arcane spellcaster who has to drain life around them in order to empower their spells in some way, shape, or form. Now, that empowerment can take a bunch of different aspects. Like when we look at the 4th edition version of it, that empowerment was basically, I can reroll stuff. So it made it either more accurate, or you could reroll damage to. And so that aspect of it, and eventually it turned into, when I empower my spells, they do more damage. If we look at the 3rd edition version of it, Defiling Magic basically gave you more spells that you could use. So just being able to cast more and do more things could be a version of empowerment. And if we go back to the 2nd edition version of it, Defiling Magic just made you gain levels faster. It actually it didn't technically give you more experience. It reduced the amount of experience you needed to level up. But from a mechanical basis, they're effectively the same thing. So 3 different kind of flavors of Defiling Magic, where one just makes you grow in power faster, one just gives you more daily power that you can unleash on people, and the last one just amplifies your power in some way. You're more accurate, you do more damage, things like that. But they all have to have a cost. So the first thing that you kind of have to decide when you're theory crafting a character like this is, do you want to go the 2nd edition route, which is Defiler is its own class, which gives you some advantages because you don't have to worry about Defiling Magic kind of interacting with some other type of magic and creating broken combos? Or do you want to go the kind of 3rd, 4th edition version of it, where Defiling is an optional feature that any arcane magic user can do? Me personally, if we're going to be creating, again, this genericized version of the class, which is an arcane spellcaster that draws on life energy around them to amplify their spells, I think it makes sense to make it its own class, as opposed to just an option for every single arcane magic user. Because if we were making this in Dark Sun, which is where the other 2 instances, the 3rd and 4th edition, they were specifically created for Dark Sun, well, then that kind of makes sense, because all arcane spellcasters have to deal with Defiling Magic, because that's how arcane spellcasting works. There isn't really a weave that you get to tap into. It's, you need magic energy. Well, there's magic energy. It just happens to be life energy. So you can't cast arcane spells without dealing somehow with Defiling, either by using Defiling or by learning how to be a preserver. So if we were designing this for a Dark Sun campaign setting, I'd be fine with that. But since we're not, we're kind of genericizing it for just this idea of a wizard that drains life to power their spells. I like the idea more of let's make it a full-on class. And so anyone that wants to try their hand at defiling magic has to either take levels in this class or choose this class. So because of that, it gives us a lot more options as far as, what we want to do to create that feeling of I drain life to power my spells. Again, referencing the other videos in this series, we already have multiple different flavors of magic. We've talked about define magic when we were dealing with the cleric. We've talked about nature magic when we're dealing with the druid, and then arcane magic for both the wizard and the sorcerer. So those systems should theoretically already be in place for your game system. That being said, since we're creating this own custom class, I think it very easily we could just take the spells that already exist in arcane magic and give a subset of those spells to the Defiler to use, because they're still using arcane magic. They're just going to use it differently. Very similar to how the sorcerer and the wizard have very similar spell lists, but the sorcerer just uses it differently. And I think kind of the basic mechanic that we would want to design for the Defiler is basically when they cast an arcane spell, they can choose to defile. And I think it needs to be based on a die roll, that the die can get bigger as the Defiler becomes more powerful. And it could work kind of in a similar way to things like the Blood Hunter, where they have their, I think it's Sanguine dice or something like that. It's they have their Hunter's Right dice, where when they activate their Hunter's Right, they have to roll a die and they lose that much maximum hit points, but then they can do stuff. So that kind of thing where you'd roll a die and that many hit points would have to be drained from things around you, whether that is your allies or the plant life around you, doesn't really matter. And then you could use the defiling power that you got to somehow augment your spells. The most basic version is, I roll a die, it takes that much hit points from around, and it adds that to my damage roll. Easy, simple, stuff like that. But we could also, do other things. Like if we turn this defiling roll into a number of points, first of all, it gives us a lot of ability to control, but because we can kind of give a a la carte board of these are the various defiling powers you can choose to use, and to balance them, we can go, well, they cost this many defiling points. So in order to use this one, you might need to use 6 defiling points or 8 defiling points. And that also means we can be a little bit more liberal with the dice that we're giving these defilers to use, because by being able to change how much each defiling aspect costs, or whatever we want to call it, it means that we can really make them have to weigh the idea, well, is it worth doing this? The other system that we have to kind of come up with is, okay, how much life exists in the land around you? And I think we can take a lesson directly from 2nd edition for this. They have a little table that says this is the type of land. And it's not just like sparse, not quite as sparse, lots and lots of stuff. If I can find it here real quick. Let's see. What one is it? Should be the magic chapter. It's money and equipment, magic, defiling. So yeah, the different levels of the different levels of life. You have stony barrens, sandy wastes, rocky badlands, salt flats, boulder fields, silt sea, mountains, scrub plains, verdant belts, and forest. So they had 10 different types of terrain. And so you could very easily just come up with a table of different kind of terrains that you could be in, including various flavors of city and town. And part of setting the scene when you're running combat will just be saying, "Oh, we're in this particular environment," and again, it would just be a table that the DM can just pick. This makes sense, and that particular environment would have so many hit points of life per pick an area. And so you could do it, if you want to make it really, really simple, you could just do it of per encounter area. You know, if you're having an encounter, most encounters are going to happen in a relatively similar size space. So you could say, yeah, per encounter area, let's say, a forest has, let's say, 30 hit points of life that you can drain from it for a particular encounter. And that gives the Defiler kind of an idea of, okay, I've got this much life that I can use to kind of augment my attacks. At the same time, again, you have to kind of come up with this idea of how do you want to incentivize the defiling. Again, the class itself is built around this aspect of defiling, but if they can work perfectly fine without using any of their defiling abilities, well, then that could start making them just feel like, well, I have extra powers, but I can just be a normal wizard and do stuff fine. So perhaps adding penalties, if you don't defile, let's say if you don't defile in an entire encounter, or maybe every number of spells that you don't defile starts giving you negative modifiers or something like that. Or maybe you start every morning with some sort of negative modifier, and every defile that you do changes it in some way, shape, or form. I think I personally would prefer the former rather than the latter, because if you start off at a low spot during the day, anyone that's running kind of low combat adventures, the Defiler is going to feel really, really powerless. Where if it's kind of, well, every time you cast a spell without defiling, there is a penalty associated with it. I think that works a little bit better, and you just have to make sure that the penalty itself isn't so overwhelming that you feel like you're punishing the Defiler for not defiling. And just make it, again, something that's a choice. So yeah, coming up with a pretty basic system of the DM chooses, okay, it's this kind of environment, so you have this many hit points to deal with. And once you're out of those hit points, either you got to start draining it from your allies, or maybe higher level defilers, just like in 4th edition, can actually drain their enemies in order to defile. I don't think that should be something any defiler can do, because that starts to kind of get rid of the point of having the life force exist in the land and having it something that your allies have to worry about. If you can automatically just start draining the enemies, well, that kind of takes away. So putting a limit on that, maybe you could only drain so much from enemies, or you have a limited resource that allows you to drain from enemies, and once that's gone, you can't do it anymore. Stuff like that, I think, would make it a much more balanced and fun class to play. And then, yeah, the big design thing that you have to kind of come up with for this class is what are the various kind of defiling arts that we can add on here. Maybe one that allows you to change the damage type, change the area of effect. Maybe something that allows you to change the number of targets, like maybe being able to take a multi-target attack and turn it into a single target attack, or make a ranged attack and turn it into a touch-based attack, and by doing that you get some sort of bonus to it or something like that. Those are all different things that I think could be really, really interesting to give a Defiler. Very similar to kind of the Sorcerer, where they kind of modify the spells as they do it. But in order to modify those spells, they have to start draining life from something. And giving them the ability to drain the life directly from themselves, I think, might also be kind of an interesting way to do it as well. Again, not something I think a base Defiler should be able to do, but as they gain in levels, giving them the ability of, hey, you can use, part of the hit points you need to get your defiling points from your own hit points. But if you do that, it lowers your maximum until you can take a long rest or something like that. Things like that could make for a really interesting, fun class. And especially by giving them the ability to just kind of mold and change the spells by using this defiling magic, it would be a really fun class to play. Very, very dark class. But I think it could be really interesting and fun. So, yeah. Interested to hear what you guys think. First of all, how many Dark Sun fans do I have out there? Yay. Second of all, what do you think of this class? Do you think it's too similar to the Sorcerer, where they're both kind of arcane magic users that have the ability to kind of mold spells on the fly? Or do you think the defiling aspect and the life draining aspect, and kind of having to use the defiling points in order to pick your abilities, do you think that differentiates it enough that it's not going to feel that similar? And do you have a different idea about how you would want to enact a Defiler style wizard? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, that is all for me today. I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.